Presentation 2. Introduction. At the beginning of the 18th century, science was an activity with low levels of social integration. It was hard to be able to find at least 100 men dedicated to the scientific research. In a short period of time, the phrase "everything is possible" from Coiré ceases to be a slogan to describe the scientific activity of the 16th year. The shape of Earth. During that century, for many observants, the Earth seems to be totally round. Some reasons, like following the globe's curved shadow as it creeps across the moon during lunar eclipses, or even another ones, reached by the conclusion about the world's shape by only watching ships disappear over the horizon from the bottom up, then return mast first, make this some men think were there enough powerful reasons. Lack of instruments to prove theories. With this background, it was difficult to try to test certain hypotheses, which although were not yet a requirement of the society, but it was worth having scientific sources to support them. Since Aristotle, Ptolemy, Eratosthenes, Posidonio, there was no accurate way to determine how much was the degree measured. All they had were approximations, and these facts persisted until 18th century. Going back to the example the shape of the Earth, those whose hypotheses were confronted with no way of proving what was the real one, the theory of Newton or the theory of Descartes, the science needed to advance. Notions of science. However, find the true measure of the Earth's roundness, whether it was perfectly spherical or flattened at the poles to bulk at the equator, or elongated at the equator to resemble an egg on end, proved far more difficult. The actors in this study were surprised by the weakness of their convictions. The degree of maturity and consistency of their ideas was limited. The social pressure was too heavy, and the empirical data they came from was sometimes inaccurate observations. Advancements of science. Concepts such as force, gravity, pressure, etc. circulated without real scientific basis. The geographic latitude and longitude, the distance between 2 points, were no data obtained through scientific instruments or procedures to consensus. There was no universal patterns of measurement which avoided the rigorous comparison of the results obtained of some observations. Purposes of new geography. During scientific revolution, the 18th century, the appearance of new measuring instruments made possible the birth of science geography supported by mathematics and the astronomy, which reached precision and autonomy. This new geography would serve, among other intentions, to trace the path of a communication way to place on a map concentrations of population, sources of unredefined materials, and important trade routes. Astronomers, surveyors, and geodesists. Although the expectations confirmed the hypothesis of the variation of gravity with the latitude, the disagreement and the dispersion of the result between the observers justified the skepticism. And enclosed is the chart with all the measures and the differences between from one to other author. Organizing 2 scientific expeditions. In 1735, the pursuit to determine the precise shape of the Earth made it necessary to structure 2 teams of scientists who were launched on extensive and dangerous expeditions towards literally unexplored territories, where they should record all this information and make all necessary studies to try to prove facts about measure of the Earth theory. Certainly, they were going to face thrilling adventures. One expedition went to the Arctic Circle, the other expedition was sent to Virreinato of Peru. The expedition expectations. Once on board, the expedition heading for other latitudes. The scientific enterprise became an adventure, an academic, and a trip to the meeting of other cultures. The enormous costs were fully justified to contribute to the honor of France and to verify a theory. But most important than developed techniques of geography research and recognition of privileged areas of economic and trade expansion, it was completely necessary to obtain conclusive results to demand improvements in building better tools and methods of measurement. Then we have the three images of the three expeditionaries: Louis Godin, Charles-Marie Le Condamine, and Pierre Bouguer. The expedition toward the Viceroyalty of Peru, now Ecuador, consisted of 12 scientists, but not all of them survived. Some curious facts of the geodesic expedition. Larry de Ferreiro, in his Chronicles of Measure of the Earth, relates some anecdotes about 10-year effort mounted in South America by French Academy of Sciences. The 12 men of the geodesic mission to Ecuador were prepared to suffer heat stroke in the execution of their charge, but never expected that they might freeze to death on the Cordilleras of Los Andes, he said, and also writes, "We generally kept within our hut." Ferreiro adds some quotes from one of the first-hand expedition report, and I would like to textually include the whole paragraph in the following lines, totally copied because I found it very illustrative and interesting. Indeed, we were obligated to do this, both on account of the intenseness of the cold and the violence of the wind. We heard the horrid noises of the tempests, which then discharged themselves on Quito, on the neighboring country. We saw the lightning issue from the clouds, and heard the thunder roll far below us. This was taken from the Measure of Earth, the Enlightenment Expedition that reshaped our world, by Larry de Ferreiro. Anecdotes during the expedition. Second, we suffered from the asperities of such a climate. Our feet were swelled and so tender, and walking was attended with severe pain. Our hands were covered with chilblains, our lips swelled and chapped, so that any speaking or other movement of the mouth led to immediate bleeding. Our common food in this inhospitable region was a little rice boiled with some meat or fowl. Instead of fluid water, our pot was filled with ice, and while we were eating, everyone was obligated to keep his plate over a chafing dish of coals to prevent his provisions from freezing. In the Chronicles of Ferreiro, he stated some discrepancies among the members of the geodesic mission. They fight like cats and dogs, and hide their observations from one another. The mission surgeon wrote home from Panama City even before the team made landfall in Peru. It is not possible that they can finish this journey together, Ferreiro said. The versatile and talented members of the geodesic mission also pursued secondary scientific quests in the mountains and forests of the equatorial zone. They botanized with delight, stared into an active volcanic caldera, weighed their longitude by eclipses of the moons of Jupiter, with a pendulum clock that they had brought along from the purpose, and tested Newton's theory of gravity. The reasons to remember the geodesic mission. There are three main factors made relevant for our country to remember the French geodesic mission which stayed here for 10 years. First, to contribute decisively to support the thesis of Newton about the shape of the Earth. Second, to integrate Spanish sciences with the concerns and perspectives of European science. Third, the third was a great benefit that the Ecuadorian sciences and culture had with the visit of the expedition and their stay in Quito. Certainly, This 10 years long visit reaffirmed the few scientific advances done here by a little group of local investigators. Thank you.